share, recipe share. Share a little recipe with recipe share. Recipe share, recipe share. Share a little recipe with recipe share.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Recipe Share, a program on AADL TV, where we take a few minutes to talk about recipes in a featured category. Today's category is Kale'd. I'm Beth, and I'm joined by Katie and Elizabeth to tell us about the recipes. So, Elizabeth, tell us about yours.
Thank you, Beth. So both this week's recipe for me and next week's come from this cookbook my mom got me for Christmas, which is Smitten Kitchen Keepers, New Classics for Your Forever Files. And for Kale'd, I made pecorino polenta with garlicky kale. So this started out with a snafu after I decided I was going to make this, went to 3 different Ann Arbor grocery stores, and I guess everyone is making polenta because I could not find polenta to save my life. So I used medium ground cornmeal, and I'm going to say it worked great. So you can sub in cornmeal for this. And this is an interesting technique. You bake both the polenta and the kale in the oven. So it's actually, this was super easy. I was pleased. So first what you do is you combine 4 1/3 cups of water and some salt in an oven-proof baking dish and whisk in a cup of polenta, or in my case, cornmeal. And it sinks to the bottom. Don't worry about that. You cover it with foil, put it in an oven at 375 for 30 to 40 minutes. In the meantime, when that's in, you prepare the kale, which is you thinly slice 4 cloves of garlic. You wash and then tear the kale away from the stems and put the garlic and kale in another oven-proof baking dish with a 1/4 cup of olive oil, salt, pepper, and a little bit of red pepper flakes. And then I kind of tossed it all together. Then you put that in the oven with the polenta that's already baking. Oh, you cover it with foil, put that in the oven with the polenta that's already baking for about 20 minutes. Pull the kale out, give it a stir, and then put it back in the oven uncovered so that it gets a little crispy. I have to say this method worked like perfectly. The kale was softened after 20 minutes. I put it back in at 10 more minutes. I pulled out both the polenta or the cornmeal and the kale. The kale was crispy. This, like, I've never had a recipe that just like works like as I always have something go wrong, or it's like, oh, that wasn't quite right. So then 10 more minutes, you pull out the kale, set it aside to let it cool a little. You pull out the polenta, take off the foil, and you like whisk it. It's still supposed to be a little watery, but then as you whisk it, it thickens. And you whisk in half a stick of butter that I kind of like chopped up, and half a cup of pecorino romano into the polenta. And then it says, more salt and black pepper to taste. And then to serve it, you put a big scoop of polenta in a bowl, top it with the crispy kale and garlic, and a little more shredded cheese. And I do have a photo here of what it looks like. We love this dish. I'm going to definitely, the baked polenta, it worked fine. And like in this case, I would do it again, I think, only because you're also baking the kale. But you could make polenta on the stovetop, whatever. That was fine. But the kale was great baked. My husband noted that I should say that we had more leftover polenta than we had kale. So maybe use more kale if you want to have like an equal amount of leftovers. Or, polenta's fine. Top it with a fried egg. Delicious. So that was our only critique, is that we have like polenta left and no kale left. It was great. Liked it a lot. New technique for me. And yeah, that was my Kale'd.
That's awesome. Sounds tasty. And I'm super fascinated by the way that you cooked the kale, because I've definitely never baked it. And so explain to me the texture. Like, was it all crispy, or was it like a mixture of crispy and soft?
It was a mixture. Like
Okay.
the edges were kind of crispy, or the
Yeah,
smaller
yeah.
bits were crispy, and then there was still some soft bits, and it was
That
great. And the
that
the
sounds really
garlic was a
good.
little brown. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
super good.
Yummy.
Yeah, that sounds really yummy. I've never made, the only time I put kale in the oven is to make kale chips.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that sounds delish. I also wanted to mention I have only made polenta with cornmeal. I've never bought polenta in
Okay,
a
cool.
roll thing. Yeah.
I've never made it with cornmeal, so that was another like new thing for me. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good
that's
to
what it is.
know.
It's just that, so
Right.
you
Yeah, I
buy it
just
in a
buy it.
tube? Is that what you do? You buy it in a tube, or
No,
is
you
it
can
just
buy
says
it like,
polenta?
yeah, it's just looks like cornmeal, it
Oh,
just says polenta. Is it the
it's,
same thing? I don't know, maybe.
yeah, it is the same thing. It might have some other, like salt or something in it. I'm not sure, but yeah, for sure. That's,
Well, I can speak to this because I was standing in the third grocery store giving up, Googling, like, can I use cornmeal for polenta? And it said, you can. It's just that polenta is usually a finer grind.
I
So
see.
and so it might, like, the texture is a little different, but
Okay.
it was
Got it.
fine. So,
Yeah.
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 Especially add that cheese in.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm putting cheese and butter in this. It's going to be fine. So,
Yeah, yeah. That sounds good.
Good call.
Katie, how did you kale it?
Okay, so the recipe that I am sharing, I don't think it's very groundbreaking or inspiring or anything, but what it was for me was a really wonderful way to use up leftovers. So I had like this giant bag of kale, and I had some leftover already cooked chicken breast, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I'm gotta say, I'm not a fan of raw kale as much as I've tried to like it. Like, even if you massage it really good, like, it's only sometimes good to me. I was trying to do something like that. It just like wasn't working. So I'm like, what am I gonna do with all the rest of this kale? Well, I've got to cook it because I know I like cooked kale. And I've got this chicken. So anyway, I'm Googling and I come up with this recipe. It's for Parmesan chicken and kale saute. And it's from thekitchen.com. And you just, so the recipe starts out as if you have raw chicken. So you cook up your chicken in a saute pan, just with some olive oil, salt, and pepper. And so that's how you start, but mine was already cooked. So I started with the second step. In the same saute pan, you cook up onion, garlic with some red pepper flakes. You just saute that until your onion starts to soften. And then you stir in the kale. And this recipe calls for white wine, but I used a combination of chicken broth and apple cider vinegar, and that worked perfect. And then just a pinch of salt. You cover it and you cook it for about 5 minutes until your kale is just tender. And then you just return your chicken back into the skillet with everything. You mix that all together with some grated Parmesan cheese and some lemon juice. And then you just taste it, season with salt and pepper, and serve it. I happen to have a bunch of shaved Parmesan as well, so I added that on top, and I think that was kind of key here. So I would definitely recommend adding that to this. But like I said, this is like super basic, but it really was tasty and warm and a wonderful way to use up the leftovers that I had. And if you have a ton of kale, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to know what to do with that. So it's nice to have that to use in the future too.
Love simple recipes like that because it's like, in the summer, I do have a ton of kale and I'm like, I don't want to eat it raw because I also like, it's just like raw kale. It's like, okay, I'm not a giraffe. Like I just, or whatever, like I can't do it. And I think like, yeah, saute it with some like yummy stuff, use up some chicken. Like it's going to be good. Like that sounds good,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds very tasty. Good way to use up leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about my coughing.
No.
Thought I was muted. Yeah, I mean, and I'm kind of surprised to hear you guys don't like it raw. Not even if it's got all this massaged,
Yeah.
oil and lemon.
Yes, I do. I mean, I will do that, but I also like, yes, I do like that. I will eat that, but it does require, I feel like you gotta massage it.
Right? Like, I want someone else to massage the kale for me if I'm gonna eat it like that. Like, I think that's my deal. Like, if I get
Okay.
it at a restaurant or something, it's usually okay if it's in a salad, but like, I'm
Mhm.
not gonna do it. I will cook this stuff. The other thing
Fair
that I
enough.
wanted to just say was that one thing that I really love as well is cooked chard, and I think that that would be really good in this recipe.
Mm, mhm.
Any sort of cooked hearty green
Yeah.
would be great. But Beth, tell us about your kale recipe. Did you massage it?
I massaged it. Yes, I made kale salad with carrot ginger dressing. So they say here with this salad, the love and lemons, that the dressing is the star. You just, and I think it's a good way to use up if your carrots are kind of on the way out. So chop them up, not too small, but just and then roast them for like 20 minutes, half an hour. And then you make the dressing with that and a bunch of ginger. I made it a few weeks ago. I don't even know if I have. Yeah, I'll share the recipe later. It was very pretty. It was, bright orange, um, and it clung to the kale nicely, so it was very attractive. I have got a picture of mine, but it also called for roasted chickpeas, cranberries, shaved carrots, pepitas, and beets, which I did not add. Shredded beet. Called for watermelon radish, which I could not find. I just used regular radish, and avocado. So it was quite a lot. It was very brightly colored, even without the watermelon radish. I loved using my mandolin for the radishes. I hadn't done that yet. So yeah, massaged it. I'll show you this picture. Let's see how it could look. However, when I took my first bite, even though you do massage it with lemon and oil, my brain was like, where's the lemon? Where's the lemon? Because it wasn't, lemon forward like I'm so used to. Like, I will eat a whole pile of kale if it's massaged with lemon, garlic, olive oil, throw in some red pepper. Yeah, or making that tahini dressing. That's kind of my go-to. Like, once I have that in my head, like, I want that kale salad, I'll go through all the steps to just have it, because to me it's so good. But the ginger dressing was, again, something I would make if I had carrots that I need to use up. And it was really pretty. Otherwise, I like it the way I normally have it. But it was also good for me to see, like, the cranberries, the pepitas, adds a lot of texture, and it was good for it. But yeah, and I think actually the cranberries being sweet, the dried cranberries, it did, it's like their sweetness, like my brain was like, this is kale, it shouldn't be sweet. So I have a weird brain when it comes. So, you know what I mean, though?
I think it's funny because I like the flavor of dried cranberry with kale. Like, for me, that's one of my favorite combinations. So that's funny that your brain was like, this isn't right, because my brain would be like, yes, this is correct.
Yeah. I
So-
mean, and it was good. It was good. And it also did well as leftovers. Even a couple days later, because out of like desperation, I did, but of course the avocado doesn't do well. So yeah, you got to eat that avocado up first. But yeah, it was pretty and it worked.
I feel like that's the kind of salad that, like, do you ever, like, this happens to me, like, I go on vacation, I don't eat well, or like, like, or I'm like eating like whatever I want, and then I like come home and I'm just like ready to like have like greens for a few days. I feel like that's like the salad I would want with like all of those veggies, like it's vegan, it sounds
Yeah,
like,
it is
right?
vegan. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's like when I would crave that, is when I'm just like, I just want like a bowl of veggies and like
Yeah.
nothing heavy. It sounds like really good for those moments when you just start craving.
Totally. I'd say that I can't really remember, but I think that was something I made after our vacation.
Mm.
And also the chickpeas, Kurt commented like, how'd you get these so crunchy? Because it just roasted them on a higher and longer
Mhm.
amount and did it ahead of time too. So even those stayed crunchy.
Nice.
So yeah, it was good. We kale'd it, y'all. So if there's not any other comments, I will say thank you for watching Recipe Share. Be sure to click the link below to look at the event page on aadl.org to find the recipes we talked about and share your own in the comments. Join us next time when we'll be talking about impostable. We're making it postable. We look forward to seeing what you've been making, so thanks for sharing.
Recipe share, share a little recipe.